Yes.
I have a doctor's appointment, and I might.
Is it the same doctor?
No.
Okay.
This is the surgery consult.
Okay.
I had my vaccine yesterday, just today, and then the other thing tomorrow.
Okay.
But,
Can we chat later?
I'm saying because I might end up walking out just the last few minutes of class because my ride might be here.
Okay, you got it.
I swear it was relevant.
Title these ones. This is tort civil law. Now, I use this because tort and civil are basically interchangeable. So you might hear it one way or the other. They're really very, very similar. So I might go back and forth calling it tort or civil. It's the same thing. What we're going to talk about today are going to be some basics. Now, I had you guys write that story because what we're going to be talking about today as we start civil is you have to keep in mind, there's not a crime that's committed in civil law. Now, it can cross over, but we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. So, before we really get into kind of the basics, I need to kind of back up. I got to talk about some things that we've discussed in the past, but I want to be certain that we're clear on it. Because I want to compare and contrast how criminal and civil are very different. So first, we just wrapped up Unit 2 with our criminal law. Remember, for criminal law, it's where a crime has been committed, where you broke a law that was passed by government and you have impacted society. With criminal law, punishments are going to be, as we've discussed, all the way up to the death penalty, going down the list. Jail time, maximum security, minimum security, probation, suspended sentence, fines. All those things are on the table for criminal law. Civil is very, very different. It's not this. Civil is simply where an individual or group feels as though they have been wronged. Now, like we talked about with your story, it can be financial, it can be emotional, it can take a lot of different forms. But if you can prove that you have been wronged and someone else is at fault, you can file a civil lawsuit against them, where you can say, I need to be made whole again. No crime's been committed, but you gotta be certain you're made whole. Now, I gave you guys, when we first started this way back when, an example of divorce is a civil issue. It's not a crime. It's perfectly legal to get divorced. But you need the courts to make official rulings. To say, he gets this, she gets that, divide up the assets, and now you're officially divorced. That's a civil issue. However, if you feel you have been wronged by someone sliding through the crosswalk and sliding into your car, then you can say, I need to file a lawsuit to be made whole again. I need the financial amount that has cost me to fix my car or fix my mental damages of being afraid of crosswalks now. They run deep, I know. I need a certain amount of money to be made whole again. Now, an individual can file a lawsuit. Groups can file a lawsuit. I'm going to give you some examples going forward here. But what you're after is the amount of money that needs to be paid to make you whole. Now, I'm so glad that I got some examples that I did because this works out perfectly. Kaylee, your car was damaged but not totaled, right?
Right.
So you got to pay to fix the car. Got to pay for the parts, got to pay for the mechanic, don't go to mine. You need to be made right again. So the other person's responsible for that. Now, Jordan, your mental issues of crosswalks run deep, right? Terrified, right? Like cowering in fear over crosswalks. We got to pay a doctor to fix that. Maybe it takes years and years and years of therapy. That sounds expensive, right, Jordan?
Yeah, it does.
You probably need a few $1 million, right?
Definitely.
Well, we got to make you whole again. Let's go get the person that gave you this fear of crosswalks. They owe you millions of dollars. Sound good?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right. This is how civil law works. Now, I feel like I might have painted this in kind of a bad picture, in that it's all about the money. It is. It's about weird amounts of money. An old friend of mine that I grew up with, oh, I think I told you about this guy. Maybe he's the one who's in Alabama, the lawyer in Alabama. Did I tell you about him? No? Okay. Long story short, we grew up together. He went to law school in Alabama, and now he's working down there for a guy who's like the French Azar of Alabama. If you're hurt, if you're injured, call 1-800-GOOD-LAW or whatever it is. He works for him. He works for this guy who goes after people who have been hurt. And my friend was given a case, and he told me this just a few months ago. It was the biggest case he had, and this person was suing someone else. I think if I remember right, it's for like $900,000. And he won. So he gets a piece of that. The Frank the Azar of Alabama gave him a check for his work. He goes, here you go, this is your part of the settlement. He got a check for $100,000.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money to be made in civil law. Just saying.
But it's not as exciting as criminal law.
There's a different side of it. Now, I'm saying there's plenty of money to be made as a defense attorney in criminal law, too. That's a whole other issue, though. Now, when we're talking about, again, civil law, there are two big overarching questions. The first big question that has to be answered is, who's at fault? Who's responsible? Who is liable for the harm that was caused? Now again, going back to our examples that you guys told me. Avian, it was pretty clear from your story. It's not your fault, it was the doctor's fault. So we say the doctor's the one who made this mistake. Same thing with Kaylee, your story. Someone slid into you, it's their fault. Evidently, Jordan, someone smacked into you and caused you all this emotional and physical pain. They're the ones who are at fault. Second big question is, you got to ask, well, what are the damages? What's the remedy? What makes this person whole again? So, Kaylee, for yours, pretty straightforward. How much were the damages? How much did it cost to fix the car? Whatever that was, the person responsible should be paying for that. Pretty simple. Jordan, your new mental problems of being afraid of a crosswalk, oh boy. We got to dig into that deeply. We got to get that fixed. How do you ever prove that it's fixed? It can be real hard. Maybe it takes years and years and years of psychological repair. Going to a doctor 3 times a week, getting over this horrible fear of crosswalks. The person responsible should pay for that. That's the remedy. Now let me kind of play this out too. If you're the one who hit Jordan in the crosswalk and she says, I'm now afraid of crosswalks, can you maybe fight back and say, there is no way she's actually afraid of crosswalks. I'm not paying for the doctor.
Sure.
That's what the court is there to decide. They figure it out. Yes, sir.
So if the court dictates that like these people pay insane amounts of money, how does the everyday person like afford that? Is it just like if you can't pay it, do you go to jail or like
Payment plans. Or we can garnish your wages. Before you get your paycheck, you got to pay X amount to someone else until it's paid off. It can get really, really expensive real fast. Now, I want to talk about how first, who can be sued? Who's eligible for a lawsuit? Now, I'm going to give you kind of a list here, and we'll sort of talk about how this can fit in. First up, individuals can be sued. So Jordan, the one person that hit you with that car, that person could be liable. You can sue that individual. Groups can be sued. Groups of people that have something in common. Now, it's always kind of hard to give an example, so I always use the example of like an interest group. You can sue the NRA. You can sue the Sierra Club. If you can prove that what they have done harmed you. You can sue organizations. Now again, people kind of combine some of these things and I understand why. An organization is like you can sue like a school district. That's eligible as well.
You can sue Roundup.
Yes, you absolutely can. But they are a corporation. You can sue corporations. You can sue Pepsi, you can sue Roundup, all sorts of things. And I say this, sometimes you can sue the government. But I will tell you this, there are some rules and laws in place where government is somewhat protected from lawsuits. So you can try, but oftentimes they just say, we're protected from this. You can't sue the government necessarily. Yes, yes.
What are, for things like, patents and stuff, is that civil? Or?
Like applying for a patent?
Or no, like,
If
like
your
if
patent's
Pepsi-
violated?
Yeah, like if
Yes.
Pepsi was like, you can't use our logo.
Yep, that's a civil issue.
Okay.
Mhm. Now the trick is, you want to look for the person with the quote deepest pockets. You want to go after who you can get the most money from. Now again, it sounds like it's all about the money. It is. So again, I want to go back to some examples. Kayla, your car was damaged. It was someone else's fault. Was it maybe the car company that hit you's fault? Their car was not prepared to drive in the snow. Was it the tire manufacturer's fault? They didn't make tires that were good enough to stop them in the snow. Is it kind of ridiculous?
Maybe it's the city's fault for not plowing the road.
Maybe it is. All right, now we're thinking. So here's what you do. Sue the individual. Sue the car company. Sue the tire company. Sue the city. Let's put together a bunch of lawsuits.
Class action.
Not exactly, but hold on to that idea. We'll come back to that. Now, out of those four, who do you think has the deepest pockets? Who do you think? Guess that.
The tire or the car company itself.
Why is that?
Because they are the ones who make millions and billions of dollars in revenue every year.
And maybe they just want this lawsuit to go away? Does the individual have as much money as the Goodyear company? Probably not. Why not go after the city? Is that going to be kind of tough? That'll be hard. But it's possible.
On top of that, you're taking money away from yourself.
You got to pay for the lawyers. It can get real expensive on that side too. Now, I want to give you this other example of where we have criminal and civil crossing over. Now, I want to give you this example, but this is kind of old now, so maybe you're familiar with it, maybe not. Do you guys know who Erin Andrews is?
I've heard of it.
She is now, I think she's with ABC now. Erin Andrews is like a sports reporter. And during this time, I think she was with ESPN at this time. This was, I think back in like 2008, if I remember right. Erin Andrews was in a really weird situation in that she was in a hotel. She was staying there while she was working a game, and there was a guy that had this weird obsession with her. And he knew where she would be. He knew she would be at this hotel and in this room, and he actually worked at that hotel. So this guy, Michael Bennett, took the peephole from that room and turned it around. So he could look in, but you can't look out. Do you kind of see where this is going? This guy flipped the peephole around and he recorded her undressing. Now, there was a video that was something like, I forget, it's like 15 minutes long of her undressing and being naked in her hotel room, and he had a video of it. Now, there's some real serious criminal charges that go with that. But Erin Andrews said, my privacy has been violated. She's right. So there were criminal charges against him. He was found guilty of stalking, and I think if I remember right, it was like 3 or 4 other charges. Some very bizarre things. He's sentenced, and he is going to serve 30 months in prison for what he did. But when he gets out, he has civil charges against him. Now, I always ask this because people tend to ask me this question. Doesn't this sound like double jeopardy? he's being charged twice for the same crime.